He was lost in thought, sitting in the corner of the cafe, when a waiter's voice brought him back to reality. The cup of coffee arrived at the table, but the routine seemed as empty as the soul he carried. There was something in his face that reflected weariness, like someone who was searching for answers in a world that only offered more questions. It was then that he noticed the note. Simple, folded and left there, as if the wind had brought it. He hesitated, but something inside him, a spark of curiosity or a desire for meaning, made him open the paper. "Hurry! A message of love awaits you." The words resonated in his heart like an echo of something he didn't know he had lost. The direct tone of the message reminded him of ancient stories, of prophets who received clear, unmistakable orders. But why him? Was it a joke? A mistake? He looked around, searching for who could have left it, but no one seemed to pay attention. In the corner of the note, there was an address. And in his mind, a battle began. Should he simply ignore or accept the mysterious invitation? Doubt consumed him, but the feeling that something bigger was happening was undeniable. He thought of Jonas, who resisted the call only to be redirected. Maybe this was his own journey, a chance to escape the apathy that dominated his life. He left the coffee shop with the note in his pocket, the words still pulsing in his mind. The walk was short, but full of reflections. The address took him to an old house, with windows that looked like eyes tired from so much waiting. As he pushed the half-open door, he felt a mix of reverence and fear. Inside, the dim light illuminated a wooden table with a pile of aged papers. He approached and, among the letters, found a message with an even clearer and more direct tone. "Today is the day. A promise will be fulfilled." The phrase awakened something in him that he had not felt for a long time. Hope. But hope for what? And why him? The note contained a new address, the next step in a journey that seemed bigger than himself. The smell of old wood and aged papers filled the air, giving the house a weight of memories he couldn't comprehend. The light that filtered through the dusty windows illuminated an untouched space, as if time had stopped there, waiting for this moment. In the center of the room, on a worn table, lay yellowed letters and papers. He hesitated before touching anything, but the message of the note still echoed in his mind. "Hurry! A message of love awaits you." Among the papers, he found something peculiar, a partially burned letter. What remained of the text was written in a firm handwriting, as if each word had been placed there with deliberate intention. "Today, the bond will be restored. Take the next step." Below the message was an address. He didn't recognize the place, but the same inexplicable feeling, a mixture of curiosity and purpose, propelled him to move forward. As he left the house, he noticed that the sunlight seemed stronger, as if the day were taking on a more vivid tone. The path to the next address took him to an old library. The place was a sanctuary of silence and wisdom, with bookshelves that seemed to reach the sky. He walked through the aisles, guided by an intuition he didn't know he had. Among the books, he found a woman organizing volumes on one of the highest shelves. She looked at him curiously when he mentioned the letter that had brought him there. "That sounds like something you'll find here," he replied with an enigmatic smile. After a few questions, she handed him an old book. Inside it was a loose sheet of paper with a new riddle: "Truth awaits above. Seek what has been lost." The note also bore the image of a clock. Its hands stopped at 3 o'clock. He thanked her for her help and left the library with the book in hand. The clock in the image looked familiar. There was an old clock in the town's central square, deactivated, but full of stories that the locals told as legends. As he walked towards the square, he felt as if he were being led by something greater than himself. Each clue seemed carefully planned, as if someone knew not only his path, but also his soul. With the book in his hands and the riddle that accompanied it, he walked through the central square towards the old clock. Time seemed to stand still there, as if the clock itself had abandoned its mission of telling the time. The hour hand was stuck at 3, and an unusual silence enveloped the place. There was something symbolic about that place, an invisible link between the present and the past, which seemed to guide him with precision. He stopped in front of the clock, his eyes fixed on the hands. The image of the note wouldn't leave his mind. "The truth waits above." Seek what was lost. The message made sense in a way he hadn't. He could not explain. What had been lost? He looked up at the metal structure of the clock and then noticed something he had never noticed before, a small staircase hidden on the side, covered by plants. Without hesitation, he climbed the staircase. Each step felt like a test, a challenge that brought him closer to something that was beyond his understanding. When he reached the top, what he found was not a material treasure, but something deeper. On top of the clock, a small wooden box rested, guarded by time. He opened the box reverently, as if he were about to discover something precious. Inside, there was another letter. The road is long, but love never fails. Follow the signs and trust what your heart tells you. As he read the words, a wave of emotions washed over him. Love. What did it mean to him? For a long time, he had kept himself away from this feeling. He had built walls, believing that the wounds of the past could never be healed. But there, in that moment, he began to realize that love was not just a feeling. It was a transformative force, something that could restore not only his wounds, but his entire life. He went down the stairs and, not knowing exactly what to do, headed toward the exit of the square. The city around him seemed to come alive, as if every detail was illuminated by a new light. The journey, which at first seemed confusing and meaningless, now took shape. He had a purpose. He was not sure what the next step would be, but he felt that love, this lost and forgotten love, was at the center of everything. That was when he saw a figure standing at the entrance to the square. It was a woman, with a serene and compassionate gaze. She watched him with calm attention, as if she knew exactly what he was going through. He approached her, and before he could say anything, she spoke in a soft but firm voice. "You are searching for what was lost, aren't you? But what you seek is not outside of you. It is within." He fell silent, processing her words. It was as if she were a messenger, someone who knew the way without needing maps or instructions. She smiled at him and, before he could ask her anything else, she disappeared as quickly as she had appeared. He stood still, her words echoing in his mind. Love was not outside of him. It was already there, waiting to be rediscovered. He felt the weight of the woman's words as a burden and at the same time a liberation. Love was inside him, waiting to be rediscovered. But how could he find something he didn't know he had lost? The feeling of uncertainty accompanied him, but the revelation was clear. The search he had begun was not about finding something outside, but about a journey within himself. With a heavy heart and thoughts swirling in his mind, he walked without a clear direction. The city streets, which had once seemed so familiar, now seemed distant, as if he was seeing everything from a new perspective. Each step he took seemed to lead him back, somehow, to his past. He walked to the small street where he had grown up, where his memories were buried under the weight of time. The red brick houses, the gardens tended by his mother's hands, the park where he used to play. Everything seemed intact, but he knew that it had changed. He was no longer the same. What had happened to the child who played carefree in those streets? What happened to his ability to see the world through the eyes of faith, love, and hope? He sat on a bench in a park that still existed, although the place had already been taken over by new residents, children he didn't know. His eyes lost themselves in the horizon, but inside him, something began to awaken. It was then that he saw the old lighthouse in the distance. The lighthouse where his father used to take him when he was little, teaching him about the direction of life and how, even in storms, there was always a light to guide him. His father always said that as long as the lighthouse was lit, he would never be lost. He remembered the words clearly, but time had erased their true meaning. Until now. The note, the watch, the library, and the woman, everything seemed to have been a path back to that lighthouse. He stood up, feeling a new strength taking over his body. Love, like a light, guided his steps, and he knew that the lighthouse, the symbol of his father's unconditional love, would be the key to understanding everything that was happening. The path to the lighthouse was long, but with each step he felt he was getting closer to something great, something that had always been there, waiting to be rediscovered. When he arrived, the strong wind and the smell of the sea welcomed him, as if the environment itself were preparing for the encounter. He climbed the steps of the lighthouse, and when he reached the top, he stopped to admire the view. The light of the lighthouse, steady and constant, shone before his eyes. There, in the silence, he felt a deep peace, as if all the questions, all the uncertainties, had finally found an answer. Love, represented by that lighthouse, was the direction, the light that guided him in the midst of the darkness. He had found what he had been searching for, the truth that was within himself, in every choice, every memory, every gesture of love that he could still make. There, at the top of the lighthouse, he understood. Love does not fail. It never fails. At the top of the lighthouse, he remained there, absorbing the view that stretched out before him, as if the world were open before his eyes. The wind, which had once seemed like a challenge, now gently caressed him, as if acknowledging his journey. Everything was clear, but at the same time, there was a feeling that something was still missing. The answer was not yet complete. What he had found there, at the lighthouse, seemed only the beginning of something greater, a truth yet to be revealed. As he contemplated the immensity of the ocean, his thoughts returned to the woman who had met him in the square. Her words still echoed within him, "What you seek is not outside of you. It is within." How could that be true? He had always believed that the answer to his anguish lay in something external, a new achievement, a new path, a new fulfillment. But what she said challenged that belief. Love was not something he could reach with his hands or with his achievements. It was already within him, waiting to be accepted. The sun was beginning to set, dyeing the sky with gold and orange colors, and as the light dimmed, he felt the presence of something more. It wasn't a vision or a physical sensation, but a deep connection with something he couldn't explain. Suddenly, the lighthouse, with its constant light, seemed to radiate a vibrant energy, as if it had a life of its own. It was then that he heard it. It wasn't a voice, but a sense of clarity that filled his being. Love, the answer to his search, was not a distant idea or something to be achieved, but a state of being. An invisible but palpable force that had always been by his side, but which he had ignored. He understood then that love is not found in grand deeds or moments of triumph, but in the little things. In simple gestures, in silent glances, in unasked forgiveness, in unspoken care. And it was at that moment, with the sun setting and the lighthouse illuminating the vastness of the sea, that he realized something fundamental. The love he had been seeking outside, and which he now recognized within himself, had the power to transform everything around him. He did not need to wait for great external changes. The real change was within him. As he reflected on all this, a figure appeared in the distance, walking along the path that led to the lighthouse. She was enveloped in a soft light, as if she were being guided by the same energy that had guided him there. As he approached, he recognized the look in her eyes. It was the look of someone who was also searching, someone who also carried a baggage of pain and searching, but who now, like him, seemed to understand that true love is not something to be sought, but rather accepted. The woman, with a serene smile, stopped in front of him and, without words, extended her hand. He looked at her, not with the eyes of a man who had arrived there lost and empty, but with the eyes of someone who had finally understood what it meant to be loved and, more importantly, to be able to love. She didn't need to say anything, because they both knew what that gesture meant. They hadn't met by chance. That journey, the notes, the watch, the lighthouse, the letters, everything had been a preparation for that moment, for that encounter. The encounter not with a person, but with the love that existed between them, and within them. He took her hand, and in the touch, he felt a sense of fulfillment, as if he were finally in the right place, with the right person, at the right time. The love he was looking for was not outside of himself, nor in the tireless search for answers, but in the acceptance of what had always been present, the ability to surrender, to forgive, to trust, to be vulnerable. Together, there, at the top of the lighthouse, they knew that the journey was not over yet, but now, everything had a new meaning. It was no longer about finding love, but about experiencing it fully. And as the stars began to appear in the night sky, he finally understood, love never fails. It will always be there, waiting to be accepted, and more importantly, to be shared. The touch of their hands felt like more than just a connection. It was as if the entire universe had paused to witness that moment. In the silence of the top of the lighthouse, with the gentle wind lulling his thoughts, he felt a transformation begin to take place within him. The weight of doubts and uncertainties that had accompanied him for so long began to dissipate, like the fog that disappears at the touch of the dawn light. It was as if love was not something to be understood or explained, but an experience to be lived. Each step he took beside her seemed to dissolve the invisible chains that had kept him trapped in the past. The fear, the anger, the pain, everything he carried and that kept him from the true essence of love was disappearing. But it wasn't just him who changed. She, with her calm smile and the peace she emanated, also seemed to have been touched by the same force. Together, without words, they shared a silent complicity. What they were experiencing was something much deeper than a simple encounter. It was a transformation, a renewal of everything that until then seemed lost. They walked down from the lighthouse together, as if they were now lighter, more aware of their mission. Each step was now firmer, more confident. He felt that he was no longer alone, and the fear that had haunted him throughout his life began to fade. The future no longer seemed so scary. He finally understood that love was the key that unlocked all the doors he had been afraid to open. There was no longer any need to search outside for what had always been inside. They walked through the city, not in a hurry, but with the certainty that they were exactly where they needed to be. The day was already ending, but the feeling of fullness that filled it felt like a new dawn, as if the darkness of the night was finally giving way to the light of love. Each step they took towards that city now seemed like a step closer to their destination, but not a distant destination. It was the destiny of becoming who they truly were, beings full of love, compassion, and understanding. Whatever the future held for them, they knew they could face it together, because love was now their indestructible strength. As they walked, he looked out over the horizon. What had once seemed like a sea of uncertainty now appeared as an open field, full of possibilities. The truth was clear before him. The transformation was not about changing the world around him, but about embracing the love that had always been there, in every choice, in every breath. Love was the answer to all the questions he had never known how to ask. With a renewed heart and a peaceful soul, he knew, finally, that the journey was just beginning. This was not the end, but a new beginning. The love he had found within himself would now guide him to the life he had always wanted to live, a life full of purpose, light, and truth. Time continued to pass, but now, for him, time felt different. He was no longer a hostage to the hours or circumstances. Now, every moment was an opportunity to live fully, to give and receive love, and to build a legacy that transcended his own existence. Together with this woman, who was now more than a companion, he began to understand that their journey was not just about a meeting of souls. It was about creating something greater, something that would have the power to touch other lives. The love they had found was not to be kept secret, but to be spread, shared with the world around them. They began to dedicate themselves to something more. They used their experiences, their stories of transformation, to help others find the same path. He knew he could not change the past, but he could make the future different, more compassionate, more generous. They opened a space where they welcomed those who were lost, those who had forgotten what love was or who had never experienced its true essence. The city began to change too. People began to come together, to share their stories and their challenges. The energy of the love he and she had cultivated spread throughout the community, bringing with it a renewed sense of purpose and connection. What had once seemed like an indifferent town now became a place of healing, unity, and true brotherhood. He remembered what the lighthouse had symbolized for him, the light that never fails. Now he knew that he and she were new beacons for others, guiding them toward true love, the one that never fails and never ceases to shine, no matter the storm. As he looked at the woman beside him, he realized that although their journey had begun with doubt and uncertainty, it was now complete. Their love had created a legacy that would last beyond their lifetimes. And as they walked together, he understood that true eternity was not in material things, but in what we leave behind, the impact of love that touched lives, transformed hearts and, like a lighthouse, never goes out. Thank you for following this journey with us. Your presence is very important, and we want you to know how valuable you are to us. If this message touched your heart, please confirm receipt by sending the number 333 in the comments. This will help us know that the message reached you in the right way. And don't forget to join our channel. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. Stay tuned, because the angels are always sending us special messages, and you don't want to miss what's coming. See you in the next video, where new teachings and blessings will be waiting for you. See you soon, and may peace and love guide your path.